The Opium Empire, how Britain poisoned China and profited from India. In London's Westminster, the seat of British power, an MP's voice trembles as he declares opium a national disgrace. Applause fills the chamber. But thousands of miles away in Canton, the great port city of southern China, lanterns flicker as wooden chests stamped with the East India Company's crest slide onto small boats under cover of night. In Bihar, a fertile province of eastern India, a farmer signs a contract he cannot read, committing his land to poppy instead of grain. And in Human, a coastal town near Canton, Commissioner Lin Zexu signs the order to destroy the opium. Britain bans the drug at home, yet prepares to wage war to force it abroad. Now rewind. How did we get here? Begin with something ordinary. Tea. By the late 18th century, it is the quiet heartbeat of Britain, poured into porcelain cups in townhouses, dockside taverns, and country manors. A ritual enjoyed by miners and monarchs alike. But behind the ritual lies a problem. China doesn't want British goods. China is self-sufficient, confident, and selective. Britain desperately wants tea. China wants silver. So silver flows east in a river that begins eroding Britain's financial bedrock. The Bank of England worries. Parliament frets. Everyone loves tea, but no one loves the drain. The East India Company finds its solution not in London, but in Bengal and Bihar. After conquering the region, it reorganizes land, taxes, and labor to squeeze revenue out of the soil. Here's the math they settle on. Grow opium in India, smuggle it into China, collect silver from Chinese buyers, and use that silver to buy tea. A perfect loop. Illegal in China, indispensable in London. China senses the danger early. Imperial bans in 1729 and 1796 attempt to stop the trade. But the Pearl River Delta is built for loopholes. British country traders hover offshore, pretending independence from the company while being financially intertwined with it. Small boats slip through back channels at night. Compradors whisper prices. Customs officials learn to look away. What is illegal on land becomes inevitable at sea. Back in Westminster, the rhetoric glows with morality. Parliament condemns domestic opium use and frets about British virtue. Meanwhile, the same statesmen quietly applaud company revenue from India. A clean public conscience and a dirty imperial ledger. Two halves of one system. Enter Lin Zexu. Appointed in 1839, he tries a new angle. Appeal to Britain's own laws. He writes directly to Queen Victoria, asking why a nation that bans opium at home floods China with it abroad. The letter never receives a reply. In London, morality bends to commerce. Meanwhile, fields in Bihar and Bengal bloom with white poppy flowers. Company agents issue advances, cash today for a harvest tomorrow. On paper, it is encouragement. On this soil, ground it is pressure, quotas, inspections, and the quiet threat of debt. Food crops shrink, poppy expands. Stability becomes a gamble on the monsoon. As opium addiction spreads in China, silver reverses direction. It flows out of Chinese households and into British coffers, easing London's fears while destabilizing Chinese markets. Tea becomes cheap and plentiful in Britain. Tax receipts shrink in China. What feels like a solution in Whitehall feels like corrosion in Canton. The irony thickens. British reformers warn about gin and vice at home, while the state merges with a corporation to export addiction abroad. Respectability in Westminster, ruin on the frontiers of empire. By the late 1830s, China tries to enforce its own laws. British merchants demand property rights for contraband. One side speaks of sovereignty, the other of trade. The mask tears. A governor in Canton is prepared to act, and Britain's answer will be gunfire, not philosophy. Act 2, India's coerced harvest, contracts, debt, and famine. Risk. Far from the pearl-grey waters of Canton, the opium pipeline begins in the dry, bureaucratic heart of India's interior. In the agencies of Patna and Ghazipur, low buildings hum with ledgers, seals, and clerks who determine which farmers will grow what. After the monsoon, company agents travel village to village carrying advances, rupees on the table, a thumbprint on a contract, seeds distributed, acreage assigned. On paper, this is partnership. In reality, It is coercion disguised as credit. Refuse, and you risk losing access to loans, support, or favorable tax treatment. Accept, and you enter a cycle of debt with only one exit: a successful poppy harvest under rules you did not write. Ghazipur's factory processes the sticky raw opium with industrial precision. Cakes arrive in bullock carts, are weighed, kneaded, and packed into company-branded chests. The system is airtight: licensed cultivation, poppy heads counted, latex measured. A farmer cannot sell elsewhere. If the crop fails, the debt does not. If the latex is low quality, the company slashes the payment, but never the debt. Imagine a bad season near Ara. The rains arrive late. Poppy capsules are small. The farmer owes the advance, the land revenue, and the moneylender. Company riders arrive, clipboards in hand, tallying each poppy head. The farmer offers millet to cover the shortfall, but he planted poppy, not millet. He asks for time. Time means interest. Interest means another visit. Food crops retreat as poppy advances. A fragile equilibrium forms. When the monsoon behaves, villages scrape by. When it doesn't, hunger creeps in. With fewer food crops in the ground, prices soar in drought years. Families pawn jewelry, tools, or land. In some households, siblings migrate for seasonal work and do not return. Resistance takes quiet forms: underlancing poppies to reduce latex, planting hidden food patches, colluding to misreport acreage. These acts won't break the system, but they may buy a handful of meals. Company reports, meanwhile, describe contented cultivators and orderly procurement. Administrators praise revenues while requesting more police to prevent irregularities. The opium auctions in Calcutta must be fed. Every chest sold pays for magistrates, soldiers, railways, and London dividends. Reform language softens the system's edges. The system stays sharp. When drought hits hard, the trap becomes obvious. With land dominated by poppy, famine risk multiplies. Relief is delayed because the same budget that should aid villages relies on the trade choking them. The machine feeds itself first. And across the Bay of Bengal, those chests become smoke in Canton's alleys. For Britain, opium is commerce. For the farmer in Bihar, it is survival or loss. Both understand the stakes. Only one controls the terms. Act 3. China's descent. Addiction, corruption, and a governor's stand. While Indian farmers are bound by contracts, Canton's neighborhoods unravel quietly under the weight of addiction. Opium begins in riverfront dens, where sailors and coolies gather after hard shifts. Soon it climbs upward. Clerks smoke to stay alert, then to sleep. Students inhale for focus. Minor officials indulge behind screens. What starts as vice becomes routine. Routine becomes dependence. Silver drains out of China at alarming speed. Buyers pay foreign traders in silver. Traders funnel it to Calcutta. The company sends it to London. Inside China, silver grows scarce. Taxes denominated in silver rise in real cost. Magistrates scramble to meet quotas. Salaries fall behind inflation. The crisis spreads not with explosions, but with empty bowls. Imagine a clerk pawning his wife's jade hairpin to pay rising taxes. He tells himself he will quit the pipe after the next festival. His family counts rice grains into a pot. The monetary crisis is not abstract. It is personal. Meanwhile, smugglers adapt faster than officials can react. Sleek boats dart across the Pearl River Delta at dusk, hugging sandbanks. Compradors manage networks of bribes and schedules. Some officials enforce the law. Others accept silver to look away. Everyone calls it commerce. Everyone knows it is contraband. Canton balances on etiquette and denial. The Kohong, licensed Chinese merchants, struggle to satisfy both imperial commands and foreign demands. British Hongs watch profits surge and insist on property rights for goods illegal under Chinese law. Into this chaos steps Lin Zexu, the man history remembers. Arriving in Canton in 1839, he imposes discipline. He arrests dealers, forces officials to sign sobriety pledges, and organizes public pipe burnings. He understands that opium is not just a vice. It undermines the tax base, corrodes state power, and destroys families. Lin writes to Queen Victoria, pointing out the hypocrisy. Britain bans opium at home. Why export it? Abroad? The letter receives no answer. British merchants demand compensation for their property. The word property is doing moral gymnastics. Then comes the moment that changes everything. Lin surrounds the foreign factories and demands the surrender of all opium. Merchants stall. Lin holds firm. Chests pile up, over 20,000 of them. For weeks, workers mix the opium with lime and salt water and dump it into trenches at Human, the chemical froth staining the sea. British traders cry tyranny. Newspapers back home echo their outrage. The phrase free trade appears everywhere. The word opium appears less. Moral logic flips. Chinese law becomes oppression. British smuggling becomes liberty. A small naval altercation becomes the spark Britain needs. Diplomats reframe the conflict. British rights, British honour, British commerce. Parliament debates a war over trade principles, not over an illegal narcotic. Gunboats are dispatched. China speaks in laws. Britain answers in artillery. Act 4. War for a drug. The First Opium War. Gunfire opens the First Opium War at the Bogue forts, guarding the Pearl River. British steamships anchor just outside range, adjust, then strike. Their guns are modern, precise, and deadly. Chinese cannons, fixed and outdated, cannot compete. Walls crumble, forts fall. British officers write disciplined reports. The real story is technological supremacy. Iron hulls meet wooden junks. Rockets streak across skies once ruled by sails and matchlocks. It's not courage against cowardice. It's centuries of military development colliding. London justifies each victory as protection of British trade. The narcotic at the heart of the dispute rarely appears in speeches. Instead, Parliament speaks of national honour and maritime freedom. Treasury officials quietly note that Indian opium revenue helps fund the expedition itself. Ports fall along China's coast. Xiamen, Ningbo, Zhoushan, each one a bargaining chip. The British don't need to conquer China. They need to frighten it into treaties. Each captured harbour tightens the vice. As British ships move toward the Yangtze, the threat becomes existential. The Yangtze is China's grain artery. A blockade threatens hunger, not just humiliation. Diplomacy speeds up. Steam becomes leverage. The Treaty of Nanjing forces China to open 5 ports, grant extraterritorial rights, pay massive indemnities, and cede Hong Kong. Silver indemnities deepen China's monetary crisis. The empire pays Britain with the very metal opium already drained away. Britain calls it victory. China calls it disaster. A supplementary agreement, the Treaty of the Bogue, adds the most favoured nation clause, ensuring anything granted to one Western power applies to all. The legal door is open. More feet will enter. Shanghai's concessions rise. Foreign courts operate on Chinese soil. Warehouses grow along the Bund. Compradors build fortunes servicing foreigns. Firms. The economy reshapes around ports Britain forced open. Meanwhile, the opium trade expands. It becomes safer, smoother, more profitable. And the fields in India stretch wider still. Act 5. Profits, public virtue, and the expanding pipeline. Britain's victory doesn't end the trade. It industrializes it. In the treaty ports, opium dens flourish behind tea houses and shop fronts. Inspectors regulate them, then quietly ignore them. Company revenue charts in London rise neatly, each line representing thousands of Chinese lives and thousands of Indian fields. Missionaries and reformers begin documenting what officials prefer to ignore. Boys falling asleep at work, fathers selling heirlooms twice, widows pawning hairpins. Their letters and sketches make their way back to Britain. Parliamentary committees respond with sanitized language. Social dislocation, public health concerns. The human cost is folded into appendices. In Calcutta's auction rooms, business booms. Parsi and Armenian merchants refine logistics. British firms expand fleets. Every chest sold funds salaries from Lucknow to London. The pipeline seems unbreakable because each link enriches the one above it. At home, British temperance movements rally against alcohol and laudanum. pamphlets warn of family ruin. Meanwhile, the same week, MPs praise the expansion of commerce in the East. Dark profits hide inside bright speeches. Then comes the Second Opium War. The Arrow incident becomes pretext. Gunboats return. New treaties hammer China open further. Foreign legations in Beijing, more ports, fixed tariffs, missionaries free to roam inland, and indemnities stacked like burdens on a weakening state. Hong Kong becomes the hinge of this new world. A free port, a legal mirage, a base for capital and contraband. Shanghai's concessions grow into a city where foreign whistles regulate Chinese lives. In India, revenue officers push for more acreage. Reports praise contented cultivators, while privately pleading for more police. The machine consumes itself to stay alive. The reckoning begins, slowly. Missionary photographs, medical testimonies, and investigative reports reach British drawing rooms. For the first time, the moral split becomes impossible to ignore. The pipeline still hums, but with a cough in it. Act 6. Exposure, retreat, and long afterlives. By the 1890s, a wave of testimony forces the issue. Missionary doctors publish case notes of men wasting away at 30, women trembling, children packing pipes. Photographs travel to Britain. Lantern shows depict before and after lives. MPs feel the contradiction in their speeches. China links opium to national weakness. Reformers argue the drug is not merely a vice, it is a strategic threat. How can a nation build railroads, armies, or schools when its silver drains and its officials smoke? The Qing government launches mass suppression, registration, treatment centers, harsh penalties, public pipe destruction. Britain, under increasing pressure, negotiates agreements in 1906–07 to reduce Indian opium exports, slowly, carefully, to protect colonial budgets. In India, the change comes unevenly. Auction volumes dip. Inspectors talk about alternative livelihoods, but contracts linger. Soil damaged by years of poppy takes seasons to recover. Debt takes longer. One farmer may switch back to millet, another remains trapped for a generation. In China, suppression is inconsistent, but determined. Dens close, reopen, and close again. Inland markets shift. Reformers tie opium eradication to national survival. The message spreads. The future cannot be built on smoke. Britain performs a moral pivot without a moral reckoning. Committees speak of regrettable consequences, never apologies. The League of Nations begins drafting global narcotics rules. Britain sits at the table shaping laws for a problem it once industrialized. In India, the state replaces shrinking opium revenue with new taxes: salt, alcohol, kerosene. The extraction remains, only the commodity changes. Hong Kong transforms into a financial hub. Techniques learned under opium, arbitrage, layered legality, global logistics, become tools for modern commerce. In northern India, debt cultures outlive the trade. Scarcity remains a constant memory. Families learn to navigate a state that can be both creditor and judge. In China, the Opium Wars become national scripture. Humiliation taught in schools, dramatized in plays, etched into museums. Human's Beach becomes a site of memory, a place where a nation remembers what was taken and what it refused to surrender. The long afterlife is this: a trade meant to solve a tea bill became a template for global power, where free trade meant forced markets, where morality bent under profit, where empire hid behind clean words. The mask was policy, virtue at home, vice overseas, and ledgers that made the contradiction look tidy. Britain outlawed opium where its citizens slept, yet built a global system to sell it where its empire ruled. If you want to see how the same machinery, contracts, coercion, and polished language reappears in later free trade victories, watch the next episode. Subscribe so you don't miss the links between past deals and present rules. And share this with someone who still believes a ledger can tell the whole truth.